This is medical terminology, chapter 9, the musculoskeletal system. This is a brief video being done for students. We will be talking a lot in detail about the MS system, musculoskeletal system in class. So this is just a supplemental video for you to view before class and also after class if you need to. And so let's go ahead and go into the musculoskeletal learning objectives. We need to know what the functions are, we need to know the components, and we need to know the parts and the word parts that are associated with the musculoskeletal system. And so when we talk about the musculoskeletal system and the function, is that musculoskeletal system helps support our shape, our body. If we didn't have our musculoskeletal support system, we would just kind of be like a pudge on the floor. So it requires both our bone and it requires both our muscles that are attached to a bone to keep us up and upright and straight. So the other thing is that the musculoskeletal system protects soft body parts. So we have skeletal structures such as our ribs protects our lungs, our pelvic protects our, genital organs as well. So it helps to go ahead and protect those soft body parts. It allows for us to move our skeletal muscles, move, and then our muscles are part of that movement as well. Our bones form white blood cells, red blood cells. It forms all those uh, cells that we do need for our body, and it's the bone marrow that does that. The platelets, the white blood cells, the red blood cells, and our bone also is the storage place for those cells, the blood cells as well. And when we look at the bone marrow, if you take a bone and you cut it in half, you'll see that we have red and yellow marrow. So marrow means that center section of the bone. And that's where there's the formation of that red blood cell, white blood cells, and platelets. And platelets help us to go ahead and coagulate. That's where if we get a cut or something, the platelet helps us so that we don't bleed or hemorrhage out. So the bone marrow is so important in forming these blood cells for us. It also stores and releases minerals, and these minerals, especially calcium, that we need for our body as well. And then it's important that we have the balance between all of these minerals to keep our body healthy. And so the yellow bone marrow actually is where a lot of the fat is stored. And if you went on ahead and you also going ahead and cut, and in here I think that's like an arm. If you cut it in half, you will see that you have the muscles and the fat and the bone, which they're all uh, connected and attached here in this picture diagram. And then when we look at the bone, we kind of look at the um, bone here. They're, classified as long, short, flat, or irregular. And long bones are those in the arms and legs and thighs. Bones that are short bones are usually in the wrist area. And most of the bones of the skull are flat bones, and bones also in the spine area. But as you can see in this PowerPoint slide, we're kind of looking at the long bones here, and I did not mean to go forward, but it hopped on forward. So we'll go ahead and go forward here. So when we look at the bone and we're looking at the structure of the bone, you will see that you have blood vessels actually on the outside of the bone, and periosteum is kind of like on the outside. Periosteum, the tissues that are around the bone, and then you'll see that you have the spongy bone, which is in the center area. Then you have the compact bone, which is much stronger on the outside. Let's Here are some words that talk about the developing bone. So the combining form blasto. Blasto means embryonic or early form. So when you're looking at osteoblast, osteoblast is an embryonic bone cell. And so with growth, osteoblast develops into bone cells. And so the word that literally means bone cell is osteocytes. And osteocytes are mature bone cells that become embedded in the calcified intercellular substance of the bone. So when we talk about these word parts, we are talking about the bones cells that are being developed. And then when we look at the human skeletal, we're looking at both the axial and appendicular sections, different bones that are categorized into two areas, the axial skeleton and appendicular um, skeleton. So you'll see from this PowerPoint slide, you'll see that in blue here, that's your appendicular skeleton. That's like more of your extremities. And so you'll see it's your shoulder blade, collarbone, um, and arms and hands and pelvic bones, legs and feet. But when talking about exoskeleton, that's really your skull, your backbone, ribs, and breastbone. And so the word skeletal means pertaining to the skeleton. So the skeletal system consists of bones as well as cartilage, ligaments, tendons that are associated with the bones. Bones and muscles work together to enable us to bend our arms and legs and turn our heads. So bones and muscles all work together so that we can move our body. And then the cranium, I don't expect you to know all the parts of the cranial bones, but as you can see, we have many different bones, and the word parts are labeled out here for you so you can kind of know we have multiple flat bones that form our skull. And then the spinal column is attached to the base of the skull. So we just got done looking at our skull. And the vertebral column is commonly called the backbone or the spine and extends from the skull um, to the pelvis, and it uh, it encloses and protects the spinal cord. It supports the head and serves as a place of attachment for the ribs and the muscles of the back. The vertebral column is composed of 26 vertebrae. And just remember, vertebra with an E at the end is the plural form of vertebra. Without an E, that's singular. So when we look at the combining form, intervertebra, this means to adjoin, means between two adjoining vertebra. And so as we're looking at the vertebra here, each area is labeled out. So you have the thoracic, you have the lumbar, you have the sacrum, and you have the coccygeal vertebra. So if you ever have an injury and you see a specialist, and they tell you that you have a injury to your cervical vertebra 4, then you kind of know, oh, exactly which vertebra they're talking about. And so it is labeled out in each section: cervical, thoracic, lumbar, sacrum, and coccygeal vertebra, so that if you do have injury on a specific area, or let's say you have pinching of the nerve, then the doctor tells you it's, thoracic vertebra, T 8, then you know that that's the thoracic area. Or if they say lumbar 2, you know that that's kind of in the lower back area. So labeling it out actually helps to identify specifically the area that might be having problems. Then when you look at the word parts, and we need to learn these word parts, you'll see that cervical is the neck bones, thoraco is the thoracic, that's the chest area, lumbar is your lower back area, lumbo, sacral is your kind of the your buttock area, and coccygeal is really your tailbone. And then when we look at the thoracic cage, they have also numbers labeled, and it helps to be more specific when there are injuries. When you're looking at ribs, you can kind of go in ahead and be very specific on which rib is injured here. So you'll see you have 12 rib bones here, and the number 11 and 12 is considered floating ribs. So they're really not attached, but they're still considered as rib there as well. And the thoracic cage protects all of that: heart, lungs, everything that is located in the rib cage is protected. And here's some terminology that you can go ahead and look at as we're learning the word parts in the combining form, and then putting on suffixes to go ahead and make a medical term here. So you can take the time. I've color coded this for you so you know how we're putting the word parts for the chapter 9 together to make a medical term.